having some people join. Melanie, or Austin, will you share the bold graphic from Melanie, please? Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure thing. Let's see.
And she just walked by to walk someone somewhere, so she said she'll jump right back on to share with us. So Bold Pivot was 4 weeks long, and it is over now, but Melanie has been talking with all the agents who were in Bold, just to kind of see what they're getting out of it, what success we had.
Hi, I'm back.
Hey, hi Mel, take it away.
Hi. Yeah, so it was great. So we got lots of great feedback from all of our awesome Bold agents, and here's what we have, what they achieved. So you can kind of see the graph there. So based on the new business, the buyers and sellers, we've kind of done an estimate that's approximately 1.2 million of GCI and new business that people brought in while they're in their Bold class. So that was amazing. We had tons of contacts made and lots of future business coming as well. And we already have people that are going to be signing up for the next session and for the spring mastermind. So they're really excited, and they're excited to, keep moving forward with it. So we're really excited about these results.
Awesome, Melanie. Thanks for staying on that. So if you are interested in the next round of Bold, or just even have questions about what it's all about and the mindset, reach out to Melanie and she will give you more information or connect you with some of the agents that attended to give you some additional perspective.
Yeah.
And then Melanie, why don't you tell everyone about today's CE class that is happening at noon?
Okay, awesome. So we have, everybody loves Richard Mario, right? He's back today to talk about essentially, best practices today with up to the minute information for COVID, how to reduce your risk with all the new updates taken into consideration. So that's coming up at 12 o'clock. That's sponsored by our awesome First American Title, Tish and Chris. And that is a pre-registration class. So if you could get on the link here, it's been emailed. Also, it's in the column all. So if you could click on that link and go ahead and get pre-registered so you don't miss out on this. This is going to be some really great information. Richard Mario always brings the highest quality, best content when it comes to risk management. So I really encourage everyone, and you get a CE credit for it. So definitely get on this class today.
Great. Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, should be some really good content because he gave one of these COVID discussions to us right as COVID was hitting, but it's totally different now because we're kind of coming out and more business is happening now than it was then. So it's probably more informative now. And Mel, will you drop that registration link in the chat for anyone who just needs it quick access, please?
Great idea. Great idea. I'll do that right now.
Cool. And then the other thing on our agenda this week is on Thursday, tomorrow morning, we are doing coffee in the parking lot. It kind of started out as a haves and wants coffee, so bring those if you have them, but also just to catch up with everyone, see everyone's face safely at a distance. We'll have coffee and donuts, but feel free to bring your own if that's your comfort level. But we'll all be distanced and we'll be outdoors. It should be sunny. So 9 a.m. tomorrow, we really hope to see a lot of your faces there, even if you can just stop by and connect so we can all continue to feel connected to each other. It's been great to see a lot of your faces back in the office, but I know different people have different comfort levels too. So it would be great to see some of you guys that we haven't had the opportunity to see live and in person yet. So please join us tomorrow. And then now we have a very special guest, our very own Peter Clark today, who is going to share with us a lot of his tips, tricks, conversations that he's having with buyers and sellers, especially using Keller Mortgage. So Peter, take it away. Thanks for doing this.
Good morning. I'm coming to you from the central headquarters of Keller Williams Portland Premier, located in Durham/Portland, Oregon. And if you haven't been here in a while, get down here. Personal interaction will boost you up. Anyway, so my goal for today was to share with you exactly how we use Keller Mortgage to dramatically increase our conversion rates from contact to contract, whether that's a buyer-broker agreement or a listing agreement, using the exclusive buyer and seller benefits of our proprietary mortgage company, Keller Mortgage. So I think everybody knows that buyer can save money using Keller Mortgage. My point would be that that's a very small piece of it. It's one of two pieces. The way that I segue into Keller Mortgage is always from the following chart. And whether I'm working with a buyer or a seller that is new and it's their first home purchase, or whether they've bought and sold 100 homes, I always go to this chart. So as a lead-in, if I'm talking to a buyer, I will ask them what they think we do for our business. And I'm willing to guess that 95% of every buyer out there has the same opinion. Once they find their home on Zillow, we drive them in our car, or used to, and we unlock doors. And that's what they think we do for a living. So I address that up front, and we'll tell them that that's something that we don't even need to do anymore. But if we did, the value of it is maybe 5%. And that what happens once we have identified a property to buy or a property to get an offer on one that we're listing, this is what happens. And so this has nothing to do with Keller Mortgage, apparently, but it does. So when an offer comes in, buyers or sellers, it comes in and it will have a purchase price, a down payment, including some earnest money, and then other terms and conditions. And quite often these days, with a low interest rate, the buyer, whether they can afford to or not, will want to finance their closing costs. So they're going to make an offer and ask for a seller credit to cover their closing costs. Every offer that we write for a buyer or receive on a listing, as we all know, has three contingencies. We have financing contingency, home inspections, and appraisals. Back up to earnest money. I will tell my buyers or sellers that quite often, particularly when I'm talking to a seller, that a lot of realtors don't pay much attention to earnest money because, after all, it just kind of goes and sits in title and it's there. And if the deal falls apart, it goes back to the buyer and everything's great. We think that just by definition, earnest money is extremely important because it's what ultimately can keep a deal together. But they'll come in with earnest money, they may ask for closing costs or not, and we got three contingencies. The financing contingency, unless changed, is hardwired to be 10 business days. If you go onto a calendar, depending upon what day of the week it starts and or any holidays, that can be 2.5 to 3 weeks of calendar days before we are often certain that the buyer can actually buy the house we're helping them buy, or that they can buy the listing that we have. And if at end of 10 business days, which is 2.5 or 3 weeks, and I'll say that about 500 times, 2.5 or 3 calendar days, they get their earnest money back. No questions asked. We've lost all of our marketing momentum, and we're back on the market. Concurrent with that is the home inspection contingency. Now, home inspections cost what? If they do them all, $750 to $1,000 these days. They're wrapped in. Because of that, in a traditional environment, lenders do not order the appraisal until financing contingency and inspection contingencies have been agreed to. Then they order the appraisal. In a peak market, it could be a week or two out, which means that we get the appraisal back a week or less before closing. And if the appraisal comes in low, and in an uncertain market that does happen, we're seeing it, still seeing it now, the buyer can terminate and get their earnest money back if you're talking to a seller, or you have to negotiate some terms. So with those three contingencies, sleeping at night, whether you're buyer or seller, can sometimes be a little difficult. Wondering whether the buyer's qualified, buyer wondering whether they're actually qualified, whether the house is going to appraise, all of these things. So that's a typical flow chart for the home buying process. And we use this to get buyers to sit down with us simply by saying, has anybody ever offered to walk you through the home buying process? There's more to the presentation, but this is the meat. So when I'm talking to a seller, I then go, well, you know what, and the last two listing presentations, I've done this, Alex and I did this last week, were amazing in that the sellers were not, potential sellers were not shy at all. We walked in and they both said within the first few minutes of our conversation, so what makes you different? I'm going to show you something that will make you different, whether we have something that makes you different, whether you're a first-time agent, brand new to the business, or been in it 100 years like me, and that's Keller Mortgage. Understand that Keller Mortgage is proprietary to Keller Williams clients only. If you're not listed with Keller Williams, and if you are listed with Keller Williams and you're qualified and your agent is qualified, which takes 15 minutes, a video, to offer Keller Mortgage, makes you unique. And so if you're, so you either have to be listed with a Keller Williams agent, in which case every buyer that comes to that listing can use Keller Mortgage, or you have to be working with a Keller Williams agent as your buyer's representative. Proprietary, unique, doesn't exist anyplace else. And if you're not using it in every conversation that you have about real estate with a potential buyer or seller, I think you're missing an opportunity to differentiate yourself on the spot. So we all know that Keller Mortgage saves buyers money. It's a 0+ loan. There is no lender costs. Now, lenders are all different, and we all have our favorite lenders and relationships, and we use those, but we also always offer this. And I'll explain that in a minute. So we know that, for instance, if somebody were to borrow $250,000 with a full board traditional lender, there would be a $2,500 loan origination fee, 1%. Processing fees, underwriting fees, blah, blah, blah. I always say in my presentation, yeah, the names change and get added to every time I look at one of these things, but trust me, there's a lot of fees. So on $250,000, those fees, lender fees might be as much as $4,000. And by the way, Keller Mortgage gives the buyer $1,000 back at closing in order to help them with their prepays. So the total savings for a buyer is $5,000. That's great. What does that do for the seller? Well, when they come in here and the offer comes in, they ask for a closing cost credit, we are able to say, you know what, understand you weren't smart enough, well, maybe I don't say that, to realize there were closing costs because you probably never sat down with an agent who walked you through the process. But we're not willing to do that, but we have an alternative. You can go over here to Keller Mortgage and you can get that closing cost credit by not paying any lender fees and getting $1,000 back at closing. That's how it works for a buyer. I think that should be very straightforward, as long as you remember to tell potential buyers that we have this exclusive proprietary option for them, only if they're working with us. But for a seller, everybody goes, well, that's great for the seller. So when we're talking to a seller, the first thing we tell them is that, hey, because we have this, we get to put a sign out along a rider on our Clark Group sign that says special financing, no lender fees. And I challenge you to go out and talk to every buyer on the planet and see whether, find one that doesn't think that special financing on a house is something that piques their interest, because I don't think you will successfully be able to do that. But there is a huge, huge benefit beyond the cost savings for a seller. And I think it transfers to a buyer as well. And that is the fact that when someone applies to Keller Mortgage, it requires that they do so with full documentation. Once that is received, Keller Mortgage guarantees that they will be all the way through underwriting in 24 to 48 hours. 48 hours is the maximum. We usually get it back in 24 hours or less, which means that they have taken a 2.5 to 3 week calendar day contingency and shortened it down to 48 hours, sometimes 24. We all know that when an offer comes in, it will come in with a pre-qualification letter or a pre-approval letter. And unfortunately, in our business, those have been mixed together. Pre-qual might be where somebody calls a lender out of the phone book. No, wait a minute, what's a phone book? They call a lender off the web and say, I make $10 million and I want to buy this $400,000 house, and the lender says you're pre-qualified, and they send out the letter. It's meaningless. The other end of the spectrum is a pre-approval letter where that lender has met with, or the buyer has met with a lender. They've submitted their documentation, they've pulled the credit, it's gone through underwriting, it comes back, and the underwriter says, you are pre-approved to buy a home up to this amount, now go find a home. That's what we want on every deal, but you need to make sure when you're talking with a seller that you understand that there's a difference between those two things and that you're going to do the research. So anyway, back to the time frame. That's a 2.5 to 3 week time frame in a traditional environment to get through underwriting, particularly with all the refinances that are going on. With Keller Williams, we shorten that to 24 to 48 hours. At the same time, through Keller Mortgage, the appraisal is ordered with the application. So the appraisal is ordered on day one, not 2.5 to 3 weeks into the transaction. We had a deal where Ben, our buyer's agents, had his clients submit to Keller Mortgage at 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, and you may feel free to use this story as your own. At 9:30 Monday morning, when he rolled in and opened up his email, there was full underwriting approval on his desk in his email for that client. The appraisal had been ordered, which came back on Wednesday at value this time. And we had not even done the home inspection yet. So 72 hours into the transaction, we had shortened the two most critical and out of our control contingencies, because we don't appraise homes and we don't underwrite buyers. Those are out of our control. Those are all taken care of in this case within 72 hours. And I point that out to sellers and say, this is my exclusive, you can sleep at night answer to what's unique about working with a Keller Williams agent. So when this happens, this chart is now different. Final approval, 48 hours. Appraisal ordered day one. All that's left after the appraisal comes back is to negotiate any repairs, the home inspection and any repairs. And I think that for a seller, generally speaking, their eyes light up. They get a excited look on their face, and most of the time the response that I get is, God, that's fantastic. Now the question is, does everybody go to Keller Mortgage that we offer it? The answer is no, they don't. We have our relationships, but what we do when the agent coming to that brings the buyer to our listing has a relationship and is not willing to jeopardize the pre-qualification or the pre-approval that they brought in that relationship, we say, fine, don't. But what we do want you to do is have your client at no cost or risk make application to Keller Mortgage, because then we'll know that they're qualified. And if they don't want to use it, they can go back to their lender with this sheet of paper and say, hey, I can go here and save this much money. What can you do for me? And so while we're still around 30% of our transactions or so will actually use Keller Mortgage, the benefit goes well beyond that. And particularly getting the 10 business days cut down to 48 hours to know that they're actually approved. And we can also, tell them that if they want to use the other lender, that the requirement that we have, and we've actually countered this, is that they go in and they order the appraisal day one with the loan application, so that we have another way around. But that's basically how we use Keller Mortgage to differentiate ourselves with listings and to get buyers. And again, when you meet a buyer, they're going to think that what you do is drive them around in a car and unlock doors. And if you can't get by that, and you can't explain your value proposition to them, you probably won't end up with a buyer broker agreement or a listing contract. And you can use Keller Mortgage to get that first meeting. And you don't have to sit there at a listing or in a social setting with a potential buyer and tell them how great you are and whatever. You can simply say, I have a proprietary package opportunity for you that will save you $5,000 to $10,000 on your purchase. Would you like to sit down and talk about it? Then you have the opportunity to develop the rest of your value proposition with that buyer or that seller. So even though everybody was convinced I would talk for 3.5 hours, I'm done. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We love it, Peter. You brought up some really, really great things, especially using Keller Mortgage just to verify, double check buyers when it's your listing to make sure that they're creditworthy. So a couple things. People had asked about your slides and the flow chart. So I had posted the buyer's guide that is in our Keller Williams Portland Premier intranet, and that is where there's a basic version of those steps of the transaction, and Peter had added the 5 and the 95. There is also a buyer's guide that is fully customizable in Command, so you can add those 5% and 95% to that. And then another thing that Peter really hit on is he doesn't just use those steps for new home buyers to explain the steps of the transaction, right? He's using those for timelines. He's using those to explain the benefits of for listings, like to take a certain offer over another, and how it can affect timelines. So that's a great source to have some sort of a chart like that, whether it's the one from Command, whether it's the one in the app, whether it's you take this one in the Word document and make it your own. But that's really impactful. And then the other thing that people might be wondering about is where to get some of that Keller Mortgage charts and marketing. And Tanya in a little bit is going to show us how to get all of that, so you can have all of that marketing resources. And Robin asked, how is the appraisal fee handled? Peter, you want to speak to that?
Again?
Oh, how the appraisal fee is handled.
Well, with Keller Mortgage, if the transaction doesn't go through Keller Mortgage eats it. Thank you, Robin, for bringing that up. So you can get a buyer to go to Keller Mortgage even if they're going to use another lender, and we have no problem with that. We just want them to go there, and they get pre-qualified and then don't use Keller Mortgage. Keller Mortgage eats it. And by the way, the typical response when I talk to a sophisticated buyer or seller who's bought many homes and they don't want to go through the process, I say, I'm sorry, if you're going to work with me, you have to, because this changes daily. You know, you could go in your desk and pull out an old contract from 3 months ago, and the date at the bottom is different than the ones we're using now. So everything changes. So I just say, bear with me. This will only take a few minutes. And I've never had anybody complain when we were done. Never.
So Peter, can I add a couple things too?
Yes, you may.
I love the functionality that I get texts on my phone as to how the buyer's loan application progresses. So I'll look at my phone and I'll have a text, and it'll reference the buyer's name and their application and whether it's approved or not. And I just think it's amazing to be able to do that and not have to reach out to figure out what the status is of the transaction. You know, it'll say appraisal complete. It'll say, loan approved, that kind of thing. So that's a functionality that I really like. And I know I've shared this before. And so Peter, you know, that's an amazing tool for listing, but there's also another benefit that we've been using, and that is when offers come in at our listings and they ask for a closing cost credit, which it seems like, at least for the last 6 or 9 months, most of our offers came in asking for closing cost credits. We were countering in the counter agreement, the seller's counter, that we would not pay $5,000 worth of closing cost credits, or $6,000 or $8,000. But we would make the buyer eligible to apply for Keller Mortgage. And then in our case, we included a Keller Mortgage flyer that went back with our counteroffer. And so it worked really well, because it sort of takes the closing cost credit off the table. And if you can offer that and explain that to your sellers, that goes an awful long way toward having them believe that you are, providing the value that we think we do, that separates us from other people. So we had a home, I think it was a home we had in Hillsborough, and someone asked for around, we had a home, I forget which one it was, but they asked for an $8,000 credit, as I recall, and we ended up giving them, I thought it'd be worthwhile to give them 3, and then say they could go to a Keller Williams, make a Keller Williams application, and we would provide that information. We had one in Hillsborough where we asked our Keller Williams preferred lender to prepare a closing cost estimate, because the buyer wanted, as I recall, around a $13,000 credit for loan costs, which is crazy. And so we actually asked Academy to prepare a closing costs. We actually asked Keller Williams to prepare one, and then we sent them both to the buyer and said, here's why we're not going to give you a $13,000 closing cost credit, because those numbers that you have from More, I think it was MORE lending, aren't even applicable. They're way too high. You're paying way too much. So there's a lot of ways you can use Keller beyond the listing conversation that Peter's talking about, the points that he's making.
By the way, you mentioned the emails. One of my old clients who bought a house and used Keller Mortgage year ago or whatever, I just got an email saying that they were refinancing through Keller Mortgage, and gave me an opportunity to give them a call and make sure everything was going right, and that selling wasn't an option they were looking at, that kind of stuff. So once they're in there, you get updated on anything they have to do in that arena. And closing cost credit, like Dwight's talking about, we do the similar thing. That's it. Tanya.
Thank you, Peter. That was
way to
very
keep track
helpful.
of your clients, right?
Say what?
It's a great way to keep track of your clients.
Oh, absolutely. And and it differentiates us from anybody that's not Keller.
Yeah. Well,
Tanya,
let me show you guys.
oh,
Every
we-
single agent at
will you
Keller
start with like
Williams-
the bare bone basic of like how people contact them, Tanya?
how what?
How people even engage with Keller Mortgage or send them to their clients, or just like the very basics right at the beginning.
Oh my gosh, well, there's multiple ways. One, if they go to your website and look at a house, there's a Keller Mortgage link there. If they have your app and they look at a house, they can, or even in the guide, they can apply for Keller Mortgage there. And I'm going to show everybody how to go to Keller Mortgage, log in as an agent, and get the actual link that you can share that will connect you as their agent, so that when they do apply, you are automatically connected and you'll get that fancy little text message that Dwight was talking about. So I'm going to steal the page really fast. So every single agent can go to kellermortgage.com. And when you're on the kellermortgage.com website, there is the KW agent portal sign in over here on the side. Your login, if it doesn't automatically log you in, your login is your KW login. So it's going to bring me right into the marketing. You can see right up here at the top that I'm logged in as myself. The marketing is where you can get all of the flyers and customize it to yourself for buyers, for open houses, for listings. And then you can just add your pictures, add your information, and have it ready to go and print. It is a PDF so that you can send it off to the printers if you need to as well. But if you come over here to KM settings, right here is your personal link that you can share and send that out to everybody, so they automatically go to connect you as their agent. So as soon as they apply for a loan, you'll get a text message that says so-and-so has applied for a loan. And then I did a class that you can actually add the Keller Mortgage page to your website so that you don't have to guide them to a house. So if they just go to your page on your website, so you could share this link, that takes them right to your Keller Mortgage page. And when they click on that, that'll connect them automatically to you as their agent. So there's so many different ways that you can do it, but what a fantastic thing to do. And then going back in here to the marketing, as you can see, here's the flyers. They have 7 different buyer flyers, 4 different listing flyers, and you can see they're editable. So we could just click on one and wait a few minutes for it to load. There you go. And then there, as always, they have the disclosure on there. Your lenders love to have lots and lots of disclosures, which are technically supposed to get signed by people that that you're marketing this to. I don't know if anyone, Peter, have you had anybody sign those?
No, but your showing these flyers made a point for me. Anybody who goes and does an open house and doesn't take this document, this flyer or Keller Mortgage flyer or something with them, is missing an opportunity. I don't do open houses a lot, but real quick, real life story. I did 2 open houses in the last decade recently, and I used Keller Mortgage. I took Keller Mortgage flyers for the house, and I had 2 different potential clients headed out the door when I said, has anybody ever told you about the proprietary benefits of Keller Mortgage? Stopped them long enough for me to talk to them. I got appointments set up. I got a $775,000 listing, a $675,000 sale, and another $750,000 sale out of it. And what it came about, $1.8 million from 2 open houses. And had I not had Keller Mortgage there, I am convinced I would not have had what I needed to stop them in their tracks long enough to get them in given me an opportunity to convert them to a contract. So with what Tanya's showing you, it's a 5-minute deal to make money.
Yep. And so these are PDFs. So you could download them just up here, and then you can upload it into Command to make it customizable to add in, change out this information. You can put your name in there. What you need to remember though, anything that you do that has mortgage information that gets into details, you need to make sure that you leave all this little tiny verbiage at the bottom, and you also need to make sure that the NMLS number for Keller Mortgage is also listed. Those are very, very important things that need to be on there.
And the listing and the open house flyers are editable, and then you can put your photo right in through this portal.
It saves it as a PowerPoint for you to be able to then go ahead and save it for the open house. And that way you can open it up and you can change out pictures that will be the house that you're actually listing. They tell you details here, how to do it. Of course, you got to enable editing. And then here's where you can change out the information and you can enter in the dates and times. So very simple, very easy. Anybody can do that. Put your agent picture name in here, down at the bottom, and then put in your information. So super, super easy. That's all. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Tanya. And if you missed Tanya's class on how to add the Keller Mortgage page to your agent website, that recording is under our YouTube channel. So that would be a great one to go back and watch and add that button if it's not there already. So great advice from Peter today, and great tips on how to get to some of that marketing and engage your clients with Keller Mortgage. Does anyone else have any questions for either of them, or anything else they want to share? Anyone have experiences with Keller Mortgage? I know a lot of people in our own office have refinanced and things through them just because of the money saving. So, all right. Well, that is all we have for today. So I hope again that all of you are able to join us tomorrow in the parking lot at 9 a.m. for coffee. And we will stay safely distanced, and
Donuts.
And donuts, yes. That will be safely arranged. We're working on all the safety protocols so that everyone feels great about it. But yes, please try to join us. And then just a reminder again that CE class today starts at noon, and Melanie sent out the link in the chat and your email and your text. So. All right, everyone. Well, thank you again, Peter. And again, if you're looking for any resources, things like this, there's more, right where Tanya was showing you the flyers, there's social media, there's all kinds of other marketing. So dig around in there or reach out to Tanya if you have technology questions related to that. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.